All right, so we're going to look at some variations on the pails and rails for the shoulder. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my wrist on my lower back, and hopefully we feel a stretch here. If not, it's okay. We're trying to build up some internal rotation strength, so to speak, through this. So this would be like our passive stretch position. When I do my pails, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press my right wrist towards my left hand. You see my left hand is right there below my chest. I'm trying to drive that my right wrist through my body towards that left hand. And I'm just using that feeling there to see, to give me some proprioception there. Again, same thing, ramp up your tension slow, control. And now as I go into my rails contraction, I'm trying to pull my wrist off of my body. If you look, my elbow kind of shot back a little bit and my shoulder shot forward. And ideally, we're not going to do that. But, I was just trying my hardest to keep that in place. And because I don't have full range in my shoulder yet, it's pretty hard to do to pull my wrist off my body. So there's an example where trying as hard as you can, it's going to move a little bit. It's not a huge deal because we're still going to feel the contraction. Right now, as I go into my passive stretch, I'm raising my right wrist higher up on my back so I can get more of a passive stretch or a deeper passive stretch. And then the formula is going to be the same, right? So 30-second passive stretch here, and then I'm going to do another 20 to 30 seconds pails, 20 to 30 seconds rails, and another passive stretch. So here my pails contraction again, I'm driving my wrist forward towards my left hand through my body. I'm trying to rotate on the axis of my upper arm. I'll do that for my pails contraction, and then once I get done with that, take my breath, get ready, and then I'm going to go for my rails contraction where I'm trying to pull my wrist away from my body. So I kind of learned from my first round, I worked a little bit harder on keeping my arm stable so you didn't see as much movement forward or backward in my shoulder and elbow. Because I was just working that much harder here. But I'm still trying to rails contract. And then when I get done with that, I'm going to start to raise my arm up my back even more to get a deeper passive stretch, which I'm going to do right now. Yep. And then I'm just going to hold this passive stretch for another 20 to 30 seconds or so. And then I'll do some cars to reinforce the range of motion that I just acquired. So remember that once you do a side, you're going to immediately follow up with some shoulder cars to upload that information back to your brain and make sure that it becomes something you can use long-term or in your training. Right? And when I do my cars after my pails and rails here, it's not a whole lot of effort. It's just 10% contraction through my whole range of motion, making sure that my body is staying stable, and that I'm not cheating by doing something like tilting my body or hiking my shoulder up or rotating forward or backward as I go through my range. Just trying to stay totally stable in the context of my body. And just repeat. Anywhere from 3 to 5 reps or so. The more the better, though, honestly. If you do like 5 to 10, even better after your pails and rails. All right, so here's a different variation where I'm using the rig so you can kind of see through what I'm doing here. But you could do this up against a wall or some other stable object that you can press yourself up against. So my upper arm and my elbow are perpendicular to my body, and then I'm internally rotating my shoulder. And as I'm pushing my right arm down through the wrist, I'm making sure that my right shoulder blade doesn't raise up. So if you look at my right tank top shirt thing here, I'm trying to keep that as far away from my ear as possible so that I get that rotation. So here I'm doing my pails contraction, pressing down without letting my shoulder blade raise up, bracing through my whole body, all that good stuff. And then when I do my rails, I'm trying to release that top hand and trying to internally rotate using all the muscles in my shoulder. But I'm always checking into my right shoulder blade to make sure that that's not coming up. So this position, even though it's not on the ground, it's harder to make sure that you keep that shoulder down because you don't have the ground as feedback for you. So when you get into this position and when you start contracting, the ramping up of your contraction has to be a lot slower so you can feel if stuff starts to get out of place. If it does, stop your contraction, fix the shoulder, and then restart your contraction slowly again so that way you can manage your shoulder blade. Here's just the same thing but from a wall so you can kind of see what it looks like. So arm is roughly perpendicular to my chest. You see there I'm pushing down on my right wrist and I'm trying to keep my shoulder blade from elevating as I do that internal rotation there. And then the formula is exactly the same. Just like that, 2 minutes passive stretch, 20 to 30 seconds PAILS, 20 to 30 seconds rails, 30 seconds passive stretch, and then repeat. And then follow it up with some cars. But the same thing, as you ramp up your contraction, you got to make sure that there is no hiking of the shoulder. If you do feel it, stop your contraction, readjust back to your baseline, and then restart your contraction again.